Major League Baseball returns its peach, the All-Star game, now relocated to Denver. We talk about it coming up. A moment in time that could potentially be monetized. Jalen Suggs of Gonzaga hit a miracle buzzer beater during the men's Final Four. How much is that shot worth? And NCAA President Mark Emmert is currently fighting to maintain his position. Should he stay? Should he go? We talk about that and more right here on Fourth and Just Us. Welcome to Fourth and Just Us, our very first show, and we are so excited that you have decided to join us, and we are excited to bring you the conversations where we intersect race, politics, and sports. Kevin A.D. Anderson, Leonard Moore, and I'm one of the hosts, Lericia Harris, and we want to let you know who we are so that you can understand the various perspectives that you're going to see every time you watch us every week. So before we get into the introductions, want to remind you to head over to Facebook, hit that like button. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. And also remember that during the show, we are going to take comments. So if you have any questions or comments, make sure that you drop them in the comment section where you are currently watching us right now. So let the people know who you are. Kevin A.D. Anderson.
Thanks, Lericia. I am the original AD in Los Angeles right now, so Anthony Davis came in after me. I graduated from San Francisco State University, played football and basketball there. But over the last 30 years, I've been so fortunate to be in the lives of thousands and thousands of young people. I've been able to see them graduate, grow, and win national and conference championships. I worked at Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, West Point, Maryland, and CSUN. Glad to be with y'all tonight.
So you see that we're going to have the perspective of a former collegiate administrator, but we also have another perspective to share with you. Doc, let the people know who you are.
Thank you, Lericia. They told me I was on a delay, so if it seems like the old school Kung Fu movies, just bear with us through the tech issues. But anyway, Leonard Moore, I'm a product of Cleveland, Ohio, and Jackson State University, I love. I've been a professor for 24 years. I spent 9 years at LSU, and this is my 14th, going on my 15th year here at the University of Texas at Austin. And I think I've probably taught more Black Division I high-profile student athletes than anybody else in the country. I'm the founder and director of the Black Student Athlete Summit, the dopest 3-day event of its kind you will find. We'll be in Houston in January, and we're just glad to kick this thing off tonight.
So you have the perspective of a former administrator on the collegiate level. You have the perspective of a professor. Then you have me, my perspective. I am a journalist, a sports reporter. I've done work for ESPN, ACC Network. You name it, I probably did it. And I'm honored to be here and to help lead the conversations that we're going to have. So for every show, we're going to start off with the kickoff where we talk about current events. And we know that the MLB, again, returned its peach. They relocated their All-Star game to Denver. The move is coming from the controversial voting law that was passed in Georgia. Now, this is a 98-page voting law that makes absentee voting harder. And it also brings about more voter restrictions and complications. So a few significant changes to the voting in the state of Georgia I want you all to know about so that you can understand the perspectives that you're going to hear is the new law will curtail ballot access for voters in booming urban and suburban counties, which is home to many Democrats. Voters will now have less time to request absentee ballots. But one of the most important or key parts is that it's a crime to offer water to voters in waiting lines. So AD, we can start with you. Do you applaud the move or the stance of the MLB? Their stance is they oppose this law, hence the moving or taking away from the All-Star game in Atlanta.
First of all, Richard, come on. If you're going to give somebody a bottle of water in line and they're talking about arresting you, well, I'm surprised that the Major League Baseball decided to move it out of Atlanta. I mean, these are a lot of conservative people with abundance of wealth. But I'll just sum it up this way. When Mitch McConnell yesterday told them to keep out of politics and their business or his business, that says it all.
I think for me, Lericia, I think we need to understand that, we were disenfranchised as Black folk for about 80 years, 70 to 80 years, depending on what state you're in. And if you go back and you look at the legislation those Southern state politicians wrote in the 1880s to disenfranchise us, it had one thing in common, all right? No grandfather clause, residency requirements, poll tax, literacy tests. And if none of that didn't work, violence and intimidation. But the one thing that's interesting between both sets of laws then and now is that the laws were written without any mention of race, but they were written with a specific racial impact. And so understand, you won't see anything explicit about race in the law, but again, they understood the impact because in many ways, it seems like they want to suppress the vote in response to Warnock and the white brother winning the Senate election in Georgia back in January.
So from my perspective, I just think this new voter law is completely ridiculous. And I saw on Instagram earlier, someone posted a quote where it said, "This isn't about voter fraud. It's about historic Black voter turnout." And I want you all to keep in mind that I saw an official from the Cobb Travel and Tourism in Georgia. They told CNN that because of this move, the Atlanta area or the state of Georgia could suffer an economic loss of over $100 million due to this relocation. So again, we stand with the MLB for their stance against its voter suppression law. Moving on here, a moment in time that could potentially be monetized. Jalen Suggs of Gonzaga hit a miracle buzzer beater during the men's Final Four. Now, this particular shot could change the collegiate landscape. So, Doc, from your perspective, how much is this shot worth, or a moment like this worth?
Lericia, for the last 14 years, I've been at the University of Texas, and I think the best college football player ever, in my opinion, was Vince Young. And that 4th and 5 play they show all the time, the 2006 Rose Bowl, that I would argue is one of the most famous highlights ever. But the question is, who owns those highlights? And the Suggs shot, who owns it? Is it Gonzaga? Is it NCAA? Is it CBS? Or is it Suggs? And so I want to bring our attention to something called an NFT. It's called a non-fungible token, right? And basically, digital art is going through the roof. There was a digital painting that sold for $69 million. And just yesterday, Tom Brady launched a company in partnership with a company called Autograph to basically get into what they call non-fungible tokens. So think about digital collectibles. And when you talk about, how much that shot could be worth, that could be worth millions upon millions of dollars.
Well, with the NCAA basically on the cusp of an era where athletes can begin to allow to be profit or gain profit rather from their name, image, and likeness. I mean, how can the next buzzer beater potentially be monetized, AD?
First of all, did he call bank? Because we didn't call bank, UCLA won the game. What's troublesome about all of this is that you have the federal government involved, you have state governments involved, and every state, and I think that you're looking at over 30 states that have developed legislation about this, and they're all different. So now, how do you monitor this activity? The concern with the NCAA is not that it's the right thing to do. I think they're more concerned about the possibilities of people cheating and taking advantage of this. And that's always been the case when we look at all those rules, because, if you look at the NCAA rule book, it's unbelievable. It's bigger than the Bible. So, I think that they have to come to some kind of finding on how you move to this. But now you have the Supreme Court involved in this, and Justice Thomas said this the other day, like him or not, he questioned that how much are the athletes getting and why are they still amateurs when the coaches are making millions and millions of dollars? So are they amateurs as well, or what category do they fall in? And is there fairness in all this? So one thing that I think that needs to happen that hasn't happened, and as we move forward and the NCAA does, not only with NIL, but all of this, that there has to be a vision and there has to be some thought about how and what sports is going to look like moving forward, and be in front of it and not behind it.
You know what, Kevin, this is interesting. You know, you have the the conflating of the amateur versus the professional. And understand, listeners, amateur, there is no definition to the word amateur. The NCAA came up with the definition, but there is no definition for the word amateur. And so basically you've had a for-profit enterprise, you know what I mean, with nonprofit labor. And so it's just very interesting to see how this thing is going to get separated apart. One thing I noticed about big-time college athletics, it is immune to economic downturns. It is immune to business cycles. It is immune to everything. And understand that, you know, I think people are going to fight tooth and nail to keep the system as it is. About 7-8 years ago, when that tobacco litigation was big, I was a expert witness for about 5 years. And I remember being in the room, Kevin and Lericia, with some of these tobacco attorneys, some of these tobacco executives. And I'm like, you all can't win this. But it seemed like they were destined to go down with the ship. And I'm like, y'all can't win. Public opinion is turned against you. The science is against you. But in many ways, they were willing to stick their heels in the ground and be like, hey, we're going to fight to the death of this. And it seems like that's what the NCAA is planning to do as well.
Well, speaking of the NCAA, their president, Mark Emmert, is fighting to maintain his position. This all coming after he came under fire for the blatant disparities between the men and the women's basketball tournament. Now, the criticism is solely surrounding, well, I won't say solely, but it's surrounding his reaction or lack thereof to that issue. Many athletic directors and various commissioners have come out criticizing or stating their disappointment in his leadership. So the question, AD, should he stay or should he go?
First of all, it bothers me that people speak anonymously. You know, if there's a question about his leadership or anybody's leadership, I mean, you shouldn't make your name known, and you should question this. And there's all kind of forums that you can question it. And so when I started to read about all this, people were saying, well, you know, it's a membership organization, and, you know, we don't know who really is in charge of it. And, you know, that, well, I won't use the word that I want to because I'm trying to be a better Christian. But, you know, that's not true. And if you're a member of an organization, and you're paying to be a member of an organization, and if you don't voice your opinion and you don't talk about what you think's matter, it's shame on you. You know, the other thing in doing my research for the show today, it was shared with me that the women's committee knew that they were going to have this room for a stretching room with the equipment on it, and they voted not to have a weight room until the Sweet 16. So that's not on the leader, although he should have people in there that know better than this. But, you know, I mean, the committee voted on this from what I understand. Now, I wasn't in that room, so I can't tell you yay or nay, but, you know, other people have to take responsibility for this. But, you know, there's one thing that you asked me in the very beginning, and I think Mark has been there for 7-8 years, maybe longer, 11 years. Well, as Dr. King said, everybody likes or wishes for longevity. I think that, you know, he said no a great deal of time, or said no when he had to on some cases. And now it's probably time for him to think about, you know, what's my legacy and how do I leave this in a better spot?
But Kevin, what power does Mark Emmert have? The Mark Emmert I know at LSU when I was a professor there was a performer. Remember 2012, the Penn scandal, he brought the hammer down on Penn State. $60 million fine, vacated wins for 14 years, a significant loss of scholarships, postseason bowl bans, but he got crucified for it and he had to backtrack. So in his mind, if I can't punish Penn State for having boys sexually assaulted on campus in the football locker room by an assistant coach, then what power do I have? Kevin, let me ask you this. When you were athletic director of Maryland, you got athletic director, you got a university president, you got conference commissioner, you got the NCAA office, then you got board of directors. What is the chain of command in many ways in college athletics? Who really is in charge? Because I'll say this, Sean Miller got fired today by Arizona, but not because of the scandal, probably because he wasn't winning. Will Wade is still working at LSU. Bill Self is still working at Kansas. And so it seems to me we want to blame Emmert for a lot of stuff that's going on in many ways at the campus level. So Kevin, explain to us just the hierarchy and the structure and how decisions get made.
So Doc, it's a great question. And here's my attempt to answer this. It depends where you work. It depends on how strong the leadership is, because I've worked at places where there's been board of regents and trustees that are far more involved and far more influential. I mean, I used to work at a school where one of the highest people in the state legislature would call me and tell me that he's on 8 or 9 of the sites. He would tell me who we were recruiting. He wanted to tell me who to hire and everything else. It wasn't the president, it was him. So, you know, I mean, the circumstances are different anywhere you go to, but I mean, there's so much money and people love to be around athletics and think that they have this power that it just depends.
And let me say this about Mark, and it's not in the defense of someone's leadership, but you know, he got 4 black vice presidents up there. You know, and these, I like to say, Kevin, these are real black people, Lericia, cool folk. Donald Remy, general counsel. You got Stan Wilcock, executive vice president. You got Derek Gregg, VP of diversity and inclusion, and you got Felicia Martin, who's over, I believe, the clearinghouse. And so when I look at that, you know, because we as black folk, you know, we will count. We want to see how many black folk you got in leadership and are they in significant positions. And I don't think you can question Mark's record on that.
Well, Leonard, here's what I'll share with you as well. So the African-American athletic directors have all come together. So there's probably about 30, 40 in a room, and I believe they meet once a week. So Mark was at a meeting with them. And so at the end of the meeting, somebody asked him, so how can we make things better? And how can we do things better? And so Mark looked at them and told them that they needed to stop paying these coaches so much money and they need to stop building these buildings. Well, I've never seen an athletic director make a decision that I'm going to pay this person this kind of money or I'm going to build this building. I mean, Mark's got to go to his colleagues and the other presidents. And if anybody's going to put a stop to it, they should. But again, the genie's out of the bottle because the money's so great, but all we have to do is go back and do the Ivy League model where there's a certain amount of money you spend on athletics and the school's going to give it to you. And then you don't spend anything else. You go back and give ABC and CBS and all those other folks back their money and just do it as purely amateurism and have everybody play for the love of the game.
Those days long gone, brother.
Tell me about it.
Well, okay. Well, guys, we got to move on here. We can finish up that conversation another time, especially in the 4th down part where we talk about solutions and dive a little deeper before we close out. But we want to talk about the NCAA women's basketball tournament. They delivered on multiple fronts, giving us nail-biting performances, games all the way down to the end, to the final seconds. But another notable note is the uptick in viewership. That's a milestone. According to ESPN, the women's championship game on Sunday averaged 4 million viewers and is the most watched women's title game since 2014. As quickly as possible, because we do want to bring in our guest. She's been patiently waiting. We have a special guest, a great guest for you all, and she can also dive in and talk about this as well. But guys, just want to know from your perspective, what were your thoughts on the women's tournament? Doc, we can start with you.
I mean, it was awesome. You know, I have a daughter who plays at Incarnate Word in San Antonio. They compete in the Southland Conference. And I think like a lot of people, a lot of dads, we probably didn't really get into girls basketball and women's basketball until our daughter started playing. But I think, you know, me and my family, we probably watched 10, 11 tournament games from start to finish. I remember being in the car with my wife, and it's like, you know, if the black coaches were coaching, we were watching, definitely. We were running home from the grocery store and stuff like that. But it was exciting. It was really, really exciting to see those sisters play. You know, it's funny, Lericia, every year in my class, I give my students, we do a little case study and say, what would you do to make the women's game popular? And they'll say foolish, just like lower the rim, shorten the court, things of that nature. But I think in many ways, what this tournament showed is that the sisters can ball, they competing at a high level, and they can provide entertainment from tip off to the final whistle.
AD?
So one of the things that, and our special guests, Dawn Staley, we were on a committee together. And so one of the things we talked to ESPN, how could we drive viewership more? And one of the recommendations was play Friday and Sunday, not Sunday and Tuesday. And I think part of driving the viewership to where it was is because of Friday and Sunday. But I'm going to take it a step further. The basketball was just as exciting, if not as more exciting than the men. It was really competitive. And that, you know, what happened was that the stories behind these beautiful young women were, you know, were ones that you just wanted to stay and watch and learn more about them. So, you know, I think all those things happened, and that the question is now, is that right now, the money isn't going to be equal. The women are not going to generate the money that the men are. But what has to happen is that we have to take this into account, and we have to have equality, and that we have to say that we're going to put as much in the women's basketball game as the men's basketball game and live with it.
But I think the challenge, Kevin, is... Sorry,
I'm glad you started that conversation, AD, because we have a special guest who definitely can add on and talk about that. We want to bring into our realm right now Dawn Staley, the legendary head women's basketball coach at South Carolina. She's been there since 2018 and led the Gamecocks to a 2017 national championship. But not only that, she's a 3-time gold medalist, and she will coach Team USA in the Tokyo Games this summer. Welcome, everyone. Dawn Staley, thanks for joining us. Having slight technical difficulties, but we can see you, Coach, and we thank you for, again, joining us. I know they jumped right into it, talking about the women's game and everything, but before we go in that particular direction, I just want to congratulate you for a job well done, where you made it to in the women's tournament this year. How do you feel about it?
I mean, I feel great about where we are as a sport. I think a lot of times we aren't appreciated by, I wouldn't say the people who are really enthused about sports, and not just basketball or women's basketball. It is, you know, those people who have never watched a game. Because if you've never watched a game and you just want to comment on things on social media just for the sake of it, you really don't understand what's happening out there on the floor. We don't always play above the rim, but although some players can play above the rim, but everything below the rim is pretty similar. You know, I got a player on my team that, you know, can snatch that ball back and pull up. I got a player on my team that, you know, that can shoot deep threes. I got a player that's, you know, pretty shifty and getting to the basket. When you've been around the game at all levels, and I can say I've played it at the high level, I coach at a high level, I've been around it as an assistant coach on Olympic teams, and I've been around dream teams, and I grew up on the NBA. So I really have an understanding of how the game is played and the players that are actually playing the game. And there are a lot more similarities than not. So we're in a great place. I mean, the viewership is up. You get 2 Black female coaches in the Final Four on the women's side. That has never been done. So representation matters. I just feel like when given the opportunity, when given a fair opportunity, we put a product on the floor that everybody could be proud of. And that's all we want, is to give a fair shake. Just watch us. Just watching an entire game. And in a lot of ways, our Final Four was a lot more exciting. And I don't really want to compare the men, because it's not about that. We're all under the same umbrella. We're trying to do the same thing, and that is entertain. And I just feel like that's what you get when you watch, especially when you watch both tournaments.
Well, Coach, let me ask you this. How can we take the momentum from the NCAA tournament into the professional game? You know, I've had several students, Ariel Atkins, taught Simone Augustus at LSU, And you know, it's unfortunate that they have to go overseas and play during the winter, and then you know here we play women's basketball in the summer. What can be done to make sure what do we need to do to keep those sisters here in the States and get the WNBA in the typical winter basketball season?
Part of it is what happened last season with the collective bargaining agreement, where the top players are making enough money to stay here and not go overseas. But now the money's so good over there that it triples. Some of them get paid triple what they would get. And I do believe that the highest salary in the WNBA is over $200,000 at this time. And $200,000 you can live off, but if you're somebody like Brittany Griner that can make $1 million, seven figures, Breanna Stewart can make 7 figures, they're going to play that thing year round, no matter what it does to their bodies. And by the time they get to the WNBA, you know, they're on weary legs because they've done it year round. And and those are just 2 of the players, but they've done it from a USA basketball level as well. So they're 365 days a year. Well, I just think you just need to pour in to women's basketball. Open the books. I see where we can make it. I don't think we've opened the books on the WNBA level or the NCAA level. So we don't, it costs a lot to put our championships on, but we don't know how much. We don't know how much. We got television deals. We know how much they're worth. We don't know how much is actually being spent on women's basketball. So until we're able to open those books and see where we are failing and where we are in the black, we will never know. But obviously it takes a lot of nurturing. If, the NCAA men's tournament, 50 years ago, it wasn't making billions. So what did we do to build their game up? It's probably very similar to what you need to do if you want to build our NCAA tournament up, and vice versa with the NBA. 50, 60, 70 years ago, they weren't making what they're making now. Something happened. Somebody poured into that league and poured into the players, and that's just not taking place on the women's side yet.
So, Coach, I want to quickly ask you, because this makes me think about the comments that Draymond Green said last week when he basically said that he was really tired of seeing women complain about the lack of pay, but he said they're not laying out the steps that can be made to change that. What was your reaction to that, and what's your response to him?
Well, I think Draymond is a part of the problem. His line of thinking keeps the status quo. It's systemic. When it's all said and done, when it was found out that there wasn't a weight room, and AD just enlightened us. There wasn't supposed to be a weight room until the Sweet 16. I guess that's what our leaders agreed on. But when the players get a hold of it and they start comparing and putting it on social media, it's going to drum up a lot of stir up a lot of trouble for the overarching comparisons. When we saw the swag bags and the difference in what the men and women were getting, it's a firestorm. But I sent out a statement just saying it really isn't about a weight room or a swag bag. It's much bigger than that. And it's easy for someone to just comment on what they think we should be doing. But when the coaches got together and we saw the disparities, we start talking and complaining. You have to talk and complain. Once that happens, we had a Zoom with Mark Emmert, and we had a Zoom with Dan Gavin. That's when things will move. I know for certain, because of these conversations that we've had, women's basketball is going to be in a lot better place than we were this year compared to where we're going to be next year. So money talks. When you make a lot of money, when you make a lot of money and you give your opinion on what you think we should be doing, besides giving your, open up your wallet, that's just mere talk. That's mere talk. I mean, Draymond spoke out against it. He spoke out against it. He spoke out for it. Where is he laying it out at? If you're going to speak about it, what do you think? What's your opinion on it besides saying what we're not doing?
Hey, Coach, I want to go back to something you said earlier. Let's talk about coaching, and let's talk about coaching the women's game. There's still far too many men head coaches men in the game. And so how do we start developing more women to be able to be head coaches? And the other thing is, if we look at this, I mean, why isn't there more women, or why isn't there any women coaching in the men's game? Because I've seen the skills level that you and some of your counterparts have had, and that you definitely could do that. I'm not asking you to do that, but I mean, the question is, why don't we see more of that?
Well, if you look at, I mean, you've been in the rooms with ADs, you know what they look like, you know what the room looks like. And I'm not saying that is wrong for people to be attracted to who they're attracted to. Obviously, I've been coaching for 21 years now. I know who I like. I do my research as well. But at the end of the day, I'm going to hire the best person for the job. With ADs, the best person for the job doesn't run in their circle, as far as if they're women, if they're Black women, if they're Black men. So they're going to hire who's in their circle, or they're going to ask who's in their circle, who's the best out there. And a lot of times it's men that run in men's circles. Why aren't there more women on the men's side? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's probably the same things. You'll have a sprinkle of coaches who will be like Popovich, that will give a woman an opportunity, and then she does her thing, and it opens up doors for everybody else. I'm going to speak personally for me. My passion is for women, young women. I feel like I have a debt to our game to grow it from this level. So once they get to the next level, they'll be able to take care of it, so to speak. Understand that how to take care of it, understand how to keep their bodies, what they need to do in the communities to grow the game, how they need to be prepared and be in condition to grow our game. I don't think there's a whole lot. I think basketball is, and sports in general, you learn when you put in a situation, you adapt. Is men's basketball so far off from what we're doing in the women's game? I don't think so. But once you're in it and you're seeing it and you're studying it, anybody can can adapt to their surroundings. It's just the mountain is too high to climb when you're in the men's game, and there's a lot of pressure on you because you're one of very few to do it and do it well. And I don't know if women are willing to put themselves in that situation, or I just feel like women want to coach people that look like us, because for so long that we haven't been given the greatest opportunity or equitable opportunities that our counterparts have.
Well, Dawn, let me follow up and ask this. It seems like you have sort of taken up this. You've been you've been very vocal about the plight of Black coaches, the plight of Black women coaches. And I was telling a friend of mine, I think the torch has been passed. John Thompson, John Chaney, Vivian Stringer, and that generation, they were very vocal about the plight of Black coaches and Black athletes. But it seems like you have taken that mantle on. And I'm just trying to think of, men's coaches on the basketball side. I think Kevin Ollie was the last person to win the last Black coach to win a championship, and he got run out of UConn a year later. So how do you feel? Do you feel like it is sort of your responsibility to kind of speak up on behalf of African-American coaches?
I don't know if it's my responsibility. I do it out of necessity. And that's where my heart is right now, because I see so much, you know, so much around me. And I'm probably one, just over my career and just my personality, I like to stay in my own lane. I like to just keep it as simple and as smooth as possible. I don't like to ruffle feathers. I don't like to be confrontational. I can be, but I don't like to be. But I just feel like there's been a whole lot of injustices socially, athletically, institutionally, that I feel like I can't. I am my mother's child. And my mother got ran out of this state of South Carolina where I am, where I coach, because of something she said to a butcher. And it's the weirdest thing that as you grow up, you become more like your mom or your dad. And it's something that growing up, I never wanted to be like my mom, because she was disciplined. She was she made you do things her way. But now I'm at that place where I understand now what she was doing. And I'm thankful and grateful that I grew up in a household where my mom didn't spare the rod. I'm able to teach, I'm able to mentor, I'm able to do the things, help our young ladies navigate through life as a Black woman, because it's a little bit different. And it's the same way with our young coaches, because we don't get as many opportunities. So when you do get the opportunities, and we're getting them now, if you look and see on both sides, the men and women, we are getting these jobs that are out here. And they're good opportunities. We make them great with how successful we're going to be with it. So it is my job to make sure when they get these opportunities that we're ready.
Awesome. Yes, thank you.
So Coach, is it because your mom didn't spare the rod while you were able to have that praise break when you were talking to LaChina Robinson?
My sister was diagnosed with leukemia in May, and it's nothing but the grace of God that got her through. And we were in a pandemic, so I had that space to help her. I cast a wide net. I called every doctor that I could call, from MD Anderson to Duke to North Carolina, everywhere, and I advocated for her. We wanted the very best, and a lot of times you find that all of these doctors know each other. All of these top doctors, they know. So I was name dropping, and I was really very much out of my comfort zone. But I mean, this is a life. This is a life. This is a time when you utilize all the people that to find the best care for your sister. But I am a faithful, praying woman. And I again thank my mom for keeping us in the church. A lot of times I was going to church because each Sunday you can get my mom for a lot of money. Like, you just ask her during services, I need some money. But therein lie life lessons that I've carried on in adulthood, which will take me on to when I'm 6 feet and under. I've had a praying mother, and she passed that along as well.
Coach, I want to commend you for after the game and how you were with your team, but also how you went over and acknowledged the fans and how you accepted that particular defeat, because it was questionable. But one thing I want to go into you now, coming from North Philly, going to Charlottesville, Virginia, being a two-time Olympian, going and coaching at Temple, and then going to South Carolina, going from the North to the South and back again, and all those other experiences. Talk to us about that.
I've been very fortunate in that everything that I've needed to know in my life, I've had experiences prior to having gone through them. What made me go to Virginia from North Philly? Debbie Ryan did a great job recruiting me from very early on, 8th grade. She hung in there, very loyal. North Philadelphians, we're loyal. We're loyal. But little did I know that experience going to Virginia, predominantly white institution, little did I know that later on in my life, when it was time to go to get in this coaching, I coached 8 years at Temple University, which helped me just hone my skill as a coach. And then taking a job at South Carolina, going to a predominantly white institution and being one of 2 Black head coaches, one, female Black head coach. And sometimes you have blinders on because you just want to win. I got into coaching because winning feels good. Being a dream merchant for young people feels great. But little did I know that it would come to this. We've had, issues with social justice, and I'm right in the thick of, being in a red state. I've been accused of a lot of things when it comes to politics. But Virginia prepared me for that. It thickened my skin. It gave me what I need to combat it, and I do it just by being who I am. I'm not sacrificing anything. Everything that I do from my heart. And I feel like it's for the greater good of not just our followers, but just, human life. Like, some things are just really simple. It takes effort to be a racist, like incredible effort to not love someone because of the color of their skin is mind-boggling to me. To and I say this, and we have been supported like no other. Like, the people that come to our games, there are 12,000 people easily that come to our game. Our players decided to sit. Most of them sat for the national anthem, peaceful protest. One of them stood because they got military families. One of my other players decided sitting wasn't a strong enough statement, so she kneeled. And it was one of our white players decided to kneel after a few games, and she texted me and she's like, I feel like this isn't enough for who I represent, who I want to represent. I got to kneel. So I'm just like, damn. I'm like, okay, well, I said they gonna tear her butt up. So once she did it, I was like, I can't let her go there by herself. So the first time she did it, I kneeled with her because I didn't want her to come under everything that our players had come under for sitting. So I did it with her, and then, no one really said anything. So I was like, okay, she's cool. So I'm gonna let her do that. But then I started getting emails about just our players peacefully protesting. And I got one, from a fan who actually had my phone number, a donor, and he mentioned how disgusting of an act of what our players were doing during the national anthem. And this was January the 5th. Y'all know what happened January the 6th, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So I waited and responded after I saw exactly what was happening, at our state capitol, and I sent him back, a note just stating, what did he think about what took place, because he said he was a veteran and this is what he fought for, and he's a white man that really can't understand, and how can you how can you allow your players to do these disgusting acts? They need to get up because the people there they're really trying to reach, they're turning off. And then I posed that question. So what do you think about what just took place at the state capitol? This man said everybody has room to improve. Yeah, I mean, it's laughable. No, it's laughable. Like, you didn't condemn, you didn't use the adjective you used for our players peacefully doing something. And I don't know what the percentage of veterans out there, but there was a pretty good percentage of veterans out there, killing the Capitol police officers and all of that. And the only thing that you had to say, everybody has room to improve. Now, I will say this, he followed up after our season, right after our season. And he followed up and just said, he was heartbroken over our loss and the way we lost, and he represented But I also want to add, I hope our players stand up for the national anthem next year. So I haven't, again, I'm non-confrontational, but he's going to get a response. It's just I haven't mustered up what I want to say to him, but the audacity, the gall, but it's not going to be nice, and it's probably not going to respond to me ever again. But he has to understand, like, no one's asked why. Why are players sitting?
So, Coach, are you gonna ask him, was he in DC on January 6th?
I mean, I know he wasn't, but I know he didn't condemn it. And there's something really wrong with that picture. Again, life is so simple. We complicate things when we really, if we just take things at face value and for who people, I know people don't agree with our players. I know they don't. But they're 18 to 22 years old. They're in the most formative years of their lives. If not now, then when?
Hey, Coach, let me follow up this. Let me follow up this, Coach. It may be a Southern thing too, because the folks of Texas have blamed me for a lot of stuff too. So we got that in common. So, Coach, let me ask you this, and some of the brothers may get upset at me. When I look around the landscape of Black America in terms of social justice, whether it's sisters in the corporate space, sisters in college athletics, sisters working in school systems, principals, superintendents, I really see sisters really pushing the agenda. And I've been a professor 24 years, Coach, and it's always the brothers who tell me, man, calm it down a little bit. It don't take all that. You're a little too radical. And I remember when I was teaching at LSU, Coach, I had one day about 15 Black students in my office, and a brother comes by and he says, Dr. Moore, if I were you, I wouldn't have all these Black students in my office at one time. I'm like, why not? Then he said, you don't want all those athletes in your class. I'm like, why not? So here's my theory. Here's my theory, Coach. I think sisters understand that they will never be a part of the good old boys club. I think they know that. But I think sometimes it's us brothers. I think we believe if I work hard enough, if I become racially ambiguous, if I don't talk about race, then maybe I could get in the club. What do you think about that? And I just thought about that yesterday. What do you think about that idea that sisters are driving the agenda because they understand they will never be a part of that club?
I think we were built for this. Our skin is tough. We have a way about us that we don't back down when we know we're right, or not even that we're right personally, but it's right. The way that we see the world, the way, and we really think it can happen. Like, we really think we can help people understand how the world should be ran and how you should treat a person no matter what. And that is the thing that's so appetizing to us, that we want to keep feeding people that, because it's so simple. It is so simple. Like, I feel like, we call them the WOC, the women of color. We have a long list of coaches, head coaches, assistant coaches. We get together and we talk about how we're going to move, like how we're going to uplift. And I'm going to give you an example. Like, in the SEC, we had 7 Black head coaches out of 14. Like, we're half. We might have 8 because Vandy just opened up and they might hire, a Black coach, and it will be 8. We can write our own narrative. Like, we seriously can write our own narrative. If we want one of us to be the coach of the year, hey, we got all the votes. If we deserve it and we don't usually get it, we got all the votes. If we think that somebody should be our player of the year, we got the votes. And it's not to say that we're going to do something that is ill-advised or just untrue or should not happen, but we're in a position where we can write our own narrative. What an incredible, empowering position. And that's just, you know, postseason awards. But we're in a position where our voices are going to be heard. And if there's a vote, then we can swing it to the way we want to swing it and have, you know, and have some Black excellence all over our league. You know, something that is not being done anywhere else across the country. And it's a great feeling. It's a tremendous feeling that our voices are going to be heard, and we're unafraid to speak up. So it's pretty darn cool.
Awesome.
Coach, we thank you for taking the time to join us today.
I'm done.
Greatly appreciate it. No,
I got one more thing. I got one more thing to ask Dawn, and this is so your opportunity to work with Coach Chaney, and I had the pleasure of being with him on several different occasions. In fact, I interviewed the AD job at Temple, and they told me that you said, no, you can't hire that guy. But I had lunch with Coach Chaney. But can you share a couple stories with us about your relationship with Coach?
You know, Coach Chaney, up until his death, he would call me probably twice, 3 times, maybe 4 times a season. And he would always just keep it simple. Make sure when we had Asia Wilson, she was like, you got bigs, you know, keep working their footwork. Make sure her ass is underneath her at all times. And he was the best. Like, he was the best male coach when I got into coaching that you could ever have, because, you know, some male coaches don't really care about women's basketball, and they just really think they can do whatever they want to, you know, to women's basketball coach. But Coach Chaney didn't care. The innocence of him, the purity of him loving the game. He could walk, you know, they practice early in the morning, so he would still be in the office by the time we practice in the afternoon. He would walk through the gym. If he saw us working on a press breaker, he would come on the court, stop everything, and we would go for about an hour and a half. He put in the press breaker that we utilized today. He was like, here, we're going to put your point guard in the worst possible position on the floor. He's deep in the corner. He was like, and if she can get that ball out, you're gonna create numbers on the other end. So go score. And he was that way. He kept it, you know, the turnovers, value the ball, value each possession. He actually gave me his basketball philosophy on paper. Like, I have it. Like, he gave it to me 3 years ago when I went up after we won the national championship. He had it in a folder. He gave it to me. He's like, I want you to have this. And it's something that I cherish. But every time that he called me, every single time, if I was in my office, I would bring our coaches. I would tell them to come in the office, get your notepads, and let's hear him out, because he's going to talk. He's going to give us some nuggets and some lessons that will carry us through for as long as we want to coach. And I absolutely adored him. I absolutely adored Coach Chaney, because he loved like no other.
Yes.
Well, Coach, we greatly appreciate all this insight, all the gems you dropped on us, and the story that you just shared as well. I wish we had so much more time to continue the conversation with you. We're going to have to get you back on the show.
Thank you, please.
Hey, Dawn, thank you. Really appreciate you. You're the best. You're the best.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Again, that was Dawn Staley, the women's head coach for South Carolina. Greatly appreciate her dropping those gems, man. She gave us a lot of information here. But guys, we're slowly winding down here on time on our first show. Before we go, we have to get your final thoughts, right? She talked about laying out, or well, rather her response to Draymond Green when he said lay out, you know, the steps basically. And she talked about pouring into the women's game, pouring into women's sports, pouring into women's basketball. What's your final thoughts, Doc, from the conversation that we had with Dawn, and about what's next when it pertains to the women's game?
I'll say this, and you know, the one thing I like about Dawn is she was talking about just being your authentic self, you know, not necessarily about being confrontational, but it's about doing what's right. And, you know, and I want to talk to a lot of the young people out there today, you know, maybe hitting the job market, you know, and I just want to tell you, you know, it's not about how much money your first job, not about how much money you're paying. It's not the name on your business card. You want to go work at a place where you can be your authentic self. And that's real. You know, these days of wearing the mask, being, you know, this imposter syndrome, all that kind of stuff. Understand you are brilliant, you are talented, you are loved, and God has created you for this moment. So my challenge for you is y'all go out there and kill it. And don't ever think other people are better than you. God has put it in you, everything you need to be successful. So we go walk with our head up, and we're gonna do like Dawn said, you know, we're gonna be our authentic self.
AD?
You know, I'm going to parallel to what Leonard just said, but take it a step further. Dawn is not a coach. She's a minister. What she's doing now is, I mean, it goes back to what John said. She is that good shepherd, and she's managing the flock. And the thing that she does so tremendously well is that she doesn't let the thieves or the sheep get in with, she doesn't let the wolves get in with the sheep. And so her voice is always being heard, not only with her students and student athletes, but her ministry is so great that all people can relate to her. You don't have to be a sports fan. You could see, as Leonard said, and as she said, she's authentic, she's real, but she's got a blessing, and she's been called to do something that many people couldn't do it the way she does it. And, you know, I'm just elated that I've been able to be in her presence, and that I get to continue to see what she does with these young people and what she does for intercollegiate athletics, but better yet, what she does for our country.
And from her words, she printed she released an article with USA Today where it says, "Don't look away. Now is the time to grow our game. You can help." And so I just mimic her words. Don't look away. We saw what strong women look like. We saw what great basketball looks like. We saw the intensity. We saw people actually have a chance to see what Dawn and so many others have been saying all these years. So now we just ask that you don't look away. And again, we greatly appreciate Dawn Staley for joining us. And we appreciate you for taking the time to watch our very first episode of 4th and Justice. We will be back here every Wednesday live, 8:00 p.m. Eastern time on Facebook as well as YouTube. So if you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment, because we want to continue the conversations as we continue to go forward. So Doc, AD, I think we can say we officially wrapped this one. It's been great, guys.
Great.
We did it.
One thing I'd like to share with everybody, we're at the end of this pandemic and we could see the light. But one thing we have to do now is we have to be respectful of the 500,000 plus people who have passed away. So what we need to do is we all need to go get vaccinated, and we need to put our mask on.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks so much, Kevin. And thank you all for joining us. We'll see you back again next week. Same day, same time.